Hey, welcome back to my channel. On today's video, I'm going to be going over all of the listing agent red flags that you need to be aware of if you are considering an agent to list your home. Now, this is especially important given the current market climate right now. We are heading into the seasonal downturn wherein every year we kind of see a decrease in market activity. We kind of see things shift more towards a buyer's market just because there are a lot less buyers this time of year. It's just how it works, and that gives buyers much more negotiating power. So you're going to want to have a listing agent who is a total rock star to make sure that your property gets the most visibility. We also have to touch on the fact that interest rates are at a 20-year high right now, so that's weeding out even more buyers. But that said, sometimes life presents circumstances wherein you just have to sell your home no matter what. It can't be avoided. It can't be put off to when the market is different. So if you are in that boat, you're especially going to want to pay attention to this video. My goal when I'm listing a home for sale is always to get my sellers the highest net ROI in the shortest possible timeline with as little stress as possible. I think that's a common goal. The problem is that a lot of agents don't know how to execute that. So I'm going to just go over a few red flags that you should be aware of when you start interviewing people. Make sure you talk to at least 3 or 4 different agents and see what their pricing strategy looks like, what their marketing strategy looks like, what kind of concessions they're willing to offer you as their client, because as you may or may not be aware, you are going to be responsible for covering the commission for both your listing agent and also the buyer's agent who brings forth a buyer. You're going to want to hash out a lot of details, and you're going to want to vet a lot of people before you choose the right person. The first red flag, and this is kind of an obvious one, but if you haven't thought of it, you should, is lack of local expertise. You definitely want to hire an agent who understands not only just the geography and the local market and where things are, but also understands who the buyers are that are shopping in these areas and what their needs are. Because honestly, one of the biggest things about being a good listing agent is understanding buyers, because that's going to make it easier for someone to market your property to the right kinds of people. Therefore, you're going to want to ask your agent what kind of expertise they have about your area. Have they sold many homes in your specific neighborhood? Do they have buyers that are looking in your neighborhood? How long have they lived in the area or been around that specific part of town? You're going to want to know these things before you agree to let them list your home. Red flag number 2 is literally my probably biggest pet peeve, but it's also my biggest strength, one of them. So I feel like this is one I actually love talking about, and that is if your agent does not have amazing communication skills, they are out. You do not want to work with somebody who does not know how to communicate both with you, but also with the buyer's agent and the other side of the transaction. There are a lot of players in the game of real estate. Once you go under contract, you're working with your agent, the other agent, and their party, and then also you're working with an escrow officer and sometimes a lender unless it's a cash deal. So there are a lot of people who come into play. You're going to need somebody who is effective at communicating, but also extremely responsive. If you are having a hard time getting in touch with somebody who you're thinking about listing your home before you even get that contract signed, then I would look elsewhere, because when everything's fine, if it's hard to get in touch with them, just imagine what that's going to feel like when you're in crisis mode. You really want somebody who's going to have your back. Make sure that you hash that out too. Explain to whoever you are considering how you like to be communicated with. I always ask people, what's the best way to get in touch with you? For me, it's text, but if my clients prefer a phone call or an email or in person, like that all needs to be vetted and discussed ahead of anyone signing any contract, because that alone may be a reason why you are not a good fit to work with a specific agent. Red flag number 3 is going to be if an agent has a lack of marketing expertise or at least a marketing plan or strategy, because your home can be for sale and it can be on the MLS, but if nobody knows about it, like how are you going to get a buyer in there? That has to be at the forefront of the conversation. How are you going to market my home What strategies are you going to use? Are you paying for social media ads? Are you sending out mailers? Are you door knocking my neighborhood? Are you hosting, or is someone on your team hosting open houses here every weekend? All of that needs to be discussed. And I'm telling you, if you hire somebody who does not have marketing skills, then you're doing yourself a huge disservice. You're going to want to have somebody who's in there getting a lot of video content, making sure that the photographer who comes is the industry's best in your market. You could even talk about getting Matterport photos done or a virtual tour. That's going to be really attractive to, say, an out-of-state or remote buyer. It's like a 3D map of the home, and the buyer can kind of look in from an aerial view. They can also go into each room and then click from dot to kind of get around and take more or less what feels like a real tour. Red flag number 4, and this is something that a lot of people don't talk about, but if your realtor or your prospective realtor is making grandiose promises about pricing, it's a red flag. People will literally say anything to get the listing, and you have to keep that in mind because it makes otherwise honest people very dishonest. They'll say, "Oh, you think it's worth 700,000? Great. Like, let's just start with that." And then you're going to end up seeing a lot of price reductions. I think it's a much more valuable use of your time and your listing to look at actual data and make sure the pricing is actually what the market says it should be. Otherwise, you start getting price reductions, you start having your listing sit on the market for too long, and it becomes stigmatized. So you really don't want to go with somebody who promises you a sparkly pony, right? You really want to go with somebody who's going to be real and honest and transparent with you. So pricing is going to be a huge part of that. Another thing kind of under that same umbrella that you should be aware of is a lot of listing agents come in and say, "Let me list your house. I already have a buyer." Okay, well, you should ask a lot of clarifying questions about that buyer, like what they're interested in, what their terms might be, what kind of price tag they might be interested in offering, because a lot of people will just say they have a buyer just to get the listing, and once the listing is live, suddenly that buyer has disappeared, and you don't want to be signing a contract with somebody who's already lied to you, but also somebody who's misrepresented what they can offer to you. Red flag number 5, this is a huge one, you guys. You do not want to work with a listing agent who does not work with buyers. A lot of consumers don't understand this, but many agents will get to a point in their career where they worked with buyers, they built up their book of business. Now all those buyers are becoming sellers, and they will take on a buyer's agent to handle all the new buyers who come into their circle, right? And while this may seem like a really efficient use of team resources or, people who all work together, I would argue that a listing agent who is so out of touch with buyers really is not going to have a clear understanding of what buyers want and need in this market. They're not going to understand how to effectively market your property to buyers because they are no longer working with buyers. So make sure you ask whether or not your listing agent still works with buyers. Okay, hopefully this has been helpful to you. If you have any other questions about what you should be asking your listing agent, I am all ears. You can book a free call with me to get started or ask any other real estate related questions you may have. There's a link to do that in the description box below. It's no obligation, just an opportunity for us to connect and for me to help you devise your next and best steps. And if you haven't already, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button. I put out new videos every single week about the Reno Sparks lifestyle, the Northern Nevada housing market, and of course, all things related to buying and selling real estate. Thanks so much for watching and have a great day.